right? So, I wasn't going to make this video. I genuinely debated it, because the moment you start talking about economic collapse and one world financial systems, people assume you've lost the plot entirely. They picture a bloke in a bunker, surrounded by tin beans and conspiracy pamphlets. That is not what this is. This is a video about money, about systems, and about what smart people, not paranoid people, smart people, are doing right now, while most of the population is still scrolling TikTok and hoping for the best. My name is Jetty, and today we need to have a rather serious chat. Let's talk about what's actually going on, shall we? The United States dollar has been the world's reserve currency since 1944. That's when a bunch of men in suits sat down at Bretton Woods and said, right, the dollar runs the world now. And for decades, it worked brilliantly. But here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean slightly terrifying. Over the last several years, we've watched the US government print money at a scale that would have made previous generations physically ill. The national debt is past $36 trillion. And that's not a typo. That's a 3, followed by 13 more numbers, and simultaneously. And this part is crucial. You've got global conversations happening about moving away from dollar-based trade, BRICS nations, central bank digital currencies, the IMF talking about special drawing rights as a global basket currency. What does all that mean? It means the systems that have quietly kept your savings, your wages, your retirement funds stable-ish are under pressure. Real structural pressure, not YouTube drama pressure. Actual pressure. Now, is the world going to end tomorrow? No, probably not tomorrow. But the window to prepare, that window is open right now. And it does not stay open forever. Now look, I'm going to say the phrase, one world order. And I need you to stay with me, because I'm not talking about lizard people. I'm talking about something far more mundane and far more real. Central bank digital currencies. CBDCs. Over 130 countries are currently exploring or actively developing a digital currency issued and controlled by their central government. China already has one. The EU is working on a digital euro. The US Federal Reserve has been piloting a digital dollar project for years. Here's why that matters for your wallet. A CBDC isn't like Bitcoin. It's not decentralized. It's the opposite of decentralized. It is programmable money, meaning the people who issue it can, in theory, set conditions on how you spend it, expiry dates, approved merchant lists, spending limits. Now, that may never happen at the extreme end, but the infrastructure for that level of financial control, once it's built, it exists. Full stop. What this means, practically, is simple. If your entire financial life sits inside the traditional banking system, savings account, pension, paycheck, you have one point of failure, and that failure point is increasingly being centralized into systems you have zero control over. The move? Diversify out. Now, before diversifying out becomes complicated, taxed, or, in some jurisdictions, restricted. Right? Here's the practical part. None of this matters unless you do something with it. I'm going to give you 6 moves. These are not extreme. These are not dramatic. These are things financially literate people are doing quietly right now. 1. Get out of 100% cash savings. Inflation is a wealth tax on people who sit in cash. If your emergency fund is in a standard savings account earning 0.5% and inflation is running at 3 to 6%, you are losing purchasing power every single year while thinking you're being responsible. The move is a high-yield savings account. Look for rates above 4%, or short-term treasury bills, which are backed by the US government and currently paying competitive rates. Park your liquid emergency fund there. Not under your mattress, not in a 0.5% current account. 2. Own some hard assets. Physical gold and silver are not investment vehicles. They are insurance. They are what your money converts into when paper money loses credibility. They've held value across thousands of years of empires rising and collapsing. You don't need to go mad. 5 to 10% of your net worth in physical precious metals is a reasonable hedge. Coins, small bars, stored securely. Not in a bank safety deposit box. Ironically, because if banks close, you cannot access it. Yes, that is a thing that has happened in history multiple times. 3. Learn to generate income outside the traditional employment system. One paycheck, one employer, one tax jurisdiction. That is a fragile financial position. Full stop apocalypse or not. Start building what I call decentralized income. A skill-based freelance service. Digital products. A small local trade. Something that generates money independent of whether your employer still exists, whether the stock market is up, whether a government program is funded. This is not a side hustle motivational speech. This is risk management. If one stream dries up, the others keep flowing. 4. Reduce fixed liability. In a financial disruption, debt becomes a weapon against you. Variable rate debt especially. If interest rates spike, your monthly payments spike with them. People lost homes in 2008, not because they were foolish, but because their liabilities were variable and their income was not. Priority order. Eliminate high-interest debt first, credit cards, personal loans. Then look at your fixed expenses. Every subscription, every payment, every automatic charge. In a crisis, cash flow is king. The more lean your monthly outgoings, the longer you can survive any income disruption. 5. Hold some assets outside the banking system entirely. This is where people get uncomfortable. But hear me out. I'm not saying distrust banks entirely. I'm saying don't have everything inside a system that can freeze, fail, or be restricted. A reasonable cash reserve at home, enough for a few weeks of essentials. Physical precious metals as mentioned. And consider some exposure to Bitcoin. Not as a get-rich vehicle, but as a genuinely decentralized, non-confiscatable store of value that exists outside any single government's control. Redundancy. It's not paranoia, it's engineering. 6. Build community wealth. This one. People underestimate enormously. In every documented economic collapse, Weimar Germany, Argentina, 2001, Venezuela, the people who fared best were not necessarily the ones with the most money. They were the ones with the most relationships, people who could trade skills, who had neighbors they could rely on, who belonged to small economic networks that could function outside the formal system. Know people who grow food. Know people with medical knowledge. Know people with technical skills. And be someone with a skill that is genuinely useful. This is not romantic survivalism. This is documented historical reality. Here's the thing I want to leave you with. I am not telling you the world is ending. I genuinely don't know what's coming, and anyone who tells you they do know is selling something. What I am telling you is that the financial systems most people were raised to trust without question are changing. Structurally, systematically. And the gap between people who understand that and position themselves accordingly and people who don't is going to grow. You don't need to be rich to do most of what I've described today. You need to be intentional. You need to start now, while the systems are still functional enough to give you options. Because the time to fix the roof, as they say, is when the sun is shining. I'm Jetty. If this was useful, you know what to do with those buttons. And if you think I've completely lost it, tell me in the comments.